No one stood by him, not a single friendly glance, not one genuine hello. Just a pale, lifeless town, and a name twisted into a joke that echoed through the cafeteria. But never judge the quiet ones too quickly, because sometimes the one who speaks the least is the last soul the wolves would dare to touch. The bus window rattled gently with every pothole it crossed. Faded sunlight filtered through the glass, brushing Malik's face like a memory too old to name. He sat still, head resting against the window, eyes trailing the rows of steep-roofed houses that passed by. So identical, it felt as if time had frozen in the town of Asheville. This wasn't Malik's first school transfer. But this time felt different. Not because he was older, but because he had learned to sense the smell of a place that didn't want him from the very first breath. When he stepped off the bus, Malik's worn black shoes met unfamiliar ground, hard, cold, and full of stairs. Not because he was new, but because he wasn't like them. At Crestwood, Malik's skin color said everything he didn't. The sneaky glances, the hushed whispers, masked as harmless talk. The smiles that didn't quite reach the eyes, they all came together, like a song played in the wrong key. He didn't react. He was used to it. First class. The teacher called his name with a strained smile. A couple of girls giggled when Malik pronounced it. Some guy in the back said, "Cool name. Sounds like someone from an action movie." Malik smiled slightly, but not with his eyes. Lunchtime. The cafeteria buzzed like a teenage train station, a place where everyone had a seat, except the outsider. Malik walked past table after table, past group after group. No one looked at him, but everyone knew he was there. He picked an empty table. But just as he was about to sit, a voice cut through the air. "Hey, that seat's not for you." He turned. A blonde kid in a football jacket, half smirking. The kind of guy who always joked, but was never funny. Chad. His friends started to laugh. Not loud, but just enough for Malik to hear the unspoken truth. "You're not welcome here." No one slapped Malik, no one called him anything vile. But the way Chad smacked him on the shoulder a little too hard while passing through the narrow hallway was enough to shove him into the lockers. "Oh, didn't see you there. These dark lockers, man," Chad sneered, his voice dancing between teasing and taunting. His friends laughed behind him like it was just another episode in a long-running sitcom. Malik said nothing. He adjusted his backpack, quietly closed his locker door, and walked away, slow and steady. Each day, they found a new way to test his boundaries. Once, someone pulled his chair just as he was about to sit down in science class. His back dipped, but his reflexes caught him before the fall. A few snickers rose behind him. No one admitted it. They didn't have to. His name, Malik, gradually got replaced by nicknames. MLK Jr., Black Panther, Wakanda Lost Boy. Every time he walked across the courtyard, someone would nod and pound their chest, like in the movies, but not out of pride, out of mockery. Still, Malik didn't react, but he could feel something bubbling up inside. Not anger, but a choice. Two paths. One, react. Two, let them believe he was too soft to ever react. Every time he walked the halls, he caught the eye of the hall monitor, always watching, always ready to assume that if a fight broke out, he'd be the one who started it. Because he was different. He'd known that since he was a child. But knowing didn't make it easier. It didn't erase the feeling of waking up not to wonder what he'd learn in school, but what new game they'd play on him today. The feeling of something hitting his head in class, and the entire room pretending not to notice. The feeling of opening his lunchbox, the one his mom packed with care, only to find someone had already opened it and poured salt on everything. Each act small, calculated just enough to avoid being called violence by a teacher, but consistent enough that Malik knew this wasn't chance. One day he came home, took off his shirt, and saw the bruise on his back. Not from a punch, but a well-placed bump in the hallway. He stood in front of the mirror, staring at his reflection, not in pity, but asking himself, how much longer do I keep swallowing this? The sky burned orange as dusk settled, casting long, ghost-like shadows that dragged across the schoolyard. Malik stepped out of the library after most students had already left. The sunlight had softened, but the air, it never had. Especially not when he heard the familiar voice from behind. "Hey, Black Panther, not rushing back to Wakanda today?" Malik stopped, partly out of exhaustion, partly because he already knew. This time was different. He turned around, and just as expected, there was Chad. Same tilted grin, like the world was his private joke. 3 friends flanked him, one already holding up a phone, ready to record whatever came next. The air felt thick like rust in his lungs. "Thirsty, Malik?" Chad lifted his soda cup, and before Malik could answer, the ice-cold liquid poured down the front of his shirt. The plastic cup hit the ground with a hollow clack. The sticky drink soaked his backpack, his jacket, his hands. Malik didn't speak. He looked down, then up, slowly. Not angry, not even visibly upset. Just a silence, so deep, it made the moment terrifying. Chad laughed. "Chill, bro. It's just sugar and bubbles." One of his buddies added, "Dude's like a statue. Zero reaction." Malik walked past them, and that was when Chad shoved him hard. Not a playful nudge, a push meant to provoke. Malik stumbled but caught himself. His hand clenched instinctively. Chad took a step closer, shoulders squared, smirk untouched. "What you gonna do, huh?" 1 second, 2. Then Malik turned back. This wasn't about patience anymore, not about trying to fit in, not about his mom or his uncle's voice in his head saying, "Don't start anything." This was a moment no one else could define, but him. To keep swallowing it, or end it right here, right now? A quiet breath. One last glance. Malik set his backpack on the ground, like he was laying down every reason he ever had to hold back. A crowd began to gather. Someone lifted a phone. Whispers spread. "Oh, shit." But Malik didn't hear any of it. His ears rang as if every sound had been pulled from the world around him. There was only Chad, and one question hanging in the silence. Who's the one that should really be afraid? Malik didn't move. Chad took another step. Half triumphant, half unaware, he'd just crossed a line he couldn't uncross. "Ha ha, what's wrong? You scared?" He chuckled, sneering. "Don't worry, no one's filming, unless you're about to cry." Another laugh, then a broad hand shoved Malik square in the chest. First mistake, and the last. In a blur too fast to catch, Malik twisted his wrist, dropped his weight, and locked Chad's shoulder. A move clean and sharp, like instinct. No punches, no kicks, just a takedown. Cold and surgical, and Chad hit the pavement. It wasn't a hard fall, but it was the kind that breaks something deeper than bone. Confidence. Malik stood over him. No smile, no shout, just a gaze, black and deep like a well after a storm. One of the guys stepped forward, tried to interfere. Wrong again. Malik didn't even turn, just shifted his hips, rolled his shoulder, dipped low, and swept the kid off his feet like he'd done it 1,000 times. Face met concrete. A grunt followed. The 2 remaining boys froze. One of them backed up, dropping his phone. Malik looked up. No one was laughing now. No one was cheering. The parking lot was dead quiet, like a cemetery at midnight. The stares around him changed, from mockery to something else. No one knew how he did it. No one thought he knew how. No one thought he would. Chad scrambled up, yelling, You jumped me! That was cheap! Malik finally spoke, his first words all day. I let you for 3 weeks. Today, I just stopped letting you. His voice wasn't loud, wasn't angry, but it cut. Clean, sharp, like a blade, through the town's painted-on civility. A teacher came running, just in time to see Chad on the ground, panting like he'd been dragged under. The teacher looked at Malik, ready to shout. Then he saw the soda-stained shirt, the cup on the ground, the soaked backpack, lying limp on the pavement. And he said nothing. He just called for security, then quietly turned to Malik. Come with me to the office. We'll talk there. Malik didn't resist. He walked, slowly, right past Chad. Didn't even glance at him. As if Chad no longer existed in the world Malik had chosen to live in. That night, the video spread across student group chats. No edits, no filters, just a short clip. One takedown, one sweep, one look. But it was enough to change Black Panther the joke into Malik, yeah, don't mess with him. The next day, Malik walked into class. No applause, no whispers of awe. Just silence. The kind of silence people give when they've seen a lion get up. The chair that had been pulled out the day before now had a napkin on the seat. No one said who put it there. Maybe fear, maybe respect. But Malik didn't need to know the difference. He only needed one thing, for no one to ever mistake his silence for weakness again. From that day on, Malik was no longer the pitiful new kid. He became something else, not a hero, not a menace, but a reminder that you should never judge someone by what you see on the outside, especially when they're silent. After that day, there were no more punches, no more accidental trips in the hallway, no more whistles behind his back when Malik walked past the cafeteria. No one apologized. No one said I was wrong. But Malik didn't need that. The town, the school, and the people in it, they had come to understand something more important than an apology. Some silences aren't weakness, they're strength, simply waiting for the right moment to rise. The hall monitor didn't scold him, just sat across from him and asked one question. When did you start learning to fight? Malik shrugged. Since I knew I had to, the man nodded. No more questions. Chad wasn't expelled. But from that day on, he walked slower whenever he passed Malik. Didn't look down. But that arrogant lift of his chin was gone. Guys like him never admit fear. But fear has its own language, and eyes speak it best. Malik still sat alone at lunch. But there were no more dagger-like stares aimed at him across the room. One day, a junior came over with his lunch tray and asked, "Is this seat taken?" Malik nodded. They didn't talk much. But sometimes the strongest beginnings come in silence, because they don't need to pretend. And life moved on, like every small town, where old rumors fade into new drama, new students, new teachers. But one thing stayed the same. No one called Malik by a nickname anymore. Occasionally, someone would glance at him while passing by. Not out of fear, but curiosity, wondering what lay behind all that silence. A sadness? A story? An anger still smoldering? Or just someone who had to learn how to armor up in a place that was supposed to feel safe? Malik didn't answer. He didn't need to. Because in the end, a person's worth isn't in the noise they make, but in the kind of silence that makes everyone else stop and listen. If you've ever been underestimated for being too quiet, remember this. Not everyone who stays silent is weak, and not everyone who speaks loud is strong. Drop a comment if you've ever been a Malik, or if you've known one in real life. And if you believe in standing up at the right moment, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because this world needs more people who know how to rise when it matters most.